Well, this is quite funny, folks. Just doing the video on the ups and downs of getting to the South Pole, and I'm just literally not even more than say just over half a mile into my training session with my tyre, and guess what? Yep, that's right. The cord connecting the tyre to myself has snapped, so I'm presently here just sorting out exactly what to do. I've managed to tie it together, but I'm not sure it's going to last very long, so we'll see how it gets on today. Excellent, we're back up and running. As you can see back there, we've got the old tyre moving again, we've got it all fixed. Temporary fix though, I'm going to have to get some new cord, I think, because the cord clearly I'm using has only lasted, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. And then it snapped. That's not much good for the old John O'Groats Land's End, is it? So I'll get that done. Anyway, quite ironic, but ups and downs, and that happens on the day I'm videoing the ups and downs. Okay, quick one before we kick off. Let's, next week, what's happening next week? We're going to be going through John O'Groats Land's End, how it all get organised, what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, you name it. All the ins and outs are going to happen next week. So if that's of interest, tune in for number 3 next week. Without further ado, let's crack on with these ups and downs. Welcome everybody to episode 2 of Resetting Your Compass. Today we're going to be talking about all the ups and downs, the setbacks and the victories that have happened up to this point already. Because organising anything like this, things will go very, very well, and some things will go very, very wrong. So, without further ado, let's crack on straight into it. So, let's look at the victories and some of the setbacks that have happened prior to setting this YouTube channel up, so I can get you up to speed with where we're up to. And also show you, things don't always run smoothly, but it's how you react to those that makes a difference as to whether you're going to make it or not. I think the best place to start is to get the big one out of the way, COVID. This affected everybody on the planet, and it's affecting many, many to this day. Billions, in fact, are still being affected very seriously to this day. I would count myself as one of the lucky ones. COVID pretty much just postponed my life for a couple of years. It didn't really have a vast amount of other effects on me, apart from obviously I got COVID like many, many other people did, and I was pretty ill with it for about 6 to 8 weeks. I don't appear to have got long COVID, so I appear to have gone through it pretty smoothly, and I count myself lucky with that. But as I said, it did postpone my life for a couple of years. I was training for the pole prior to this. I just started doing the research, and it put a nail in everything. It stopped the whole thing. So for a few years I decided, well, there's no point in training, there's no point in doing the research until I actually know what's going to happen in the world. Can we travel? Can we do? You know, there's lots of different things happening. So I shelved the whole lot. But what I did do, and this is the positive that came out of it for myself, I decided to try and start working on the finances for it, because if it ever comes out, hopefully I can get the finances in place to go to the South Pole. And it also gave me something else. It gave me time to think. Like a lot of people, reset your compass, oddly enough, as to what you wanted to do in life. It really did cement the fact that I really wanted to go to the South Pole. And as I said previously, it also helped because I set up something, a new app, created a brand new app called Social Bubbles. So along the lines of, I don't know, WhatsApp is probably the closest thing that it was, but it had an event functionality to it where you could organise events. It took a long time during the lockdown for me to create that and launch it, and I'll talk about it a little bit later as to how all that went. But that was the positives. It gave me an opportunity to do something different and get on and moving. So even a negative, you can turn to a positive. Let's look at positive number 1. Sorting the research and logistics out. This was a massive, massive milestone. I can tell you, whenever you do any sort of expedition planning, by goodness, you'll come across some rubbish on the internet. You really will. But there's some also cracking companies out there, and you really have to wade your way through to find out which ones are the good ones and which ones are wasting your time. I've been very, very lucky. I've managed to find what I would say is the best company out there for my logistics for the South Pole. They are brilliant. They give me a vast amount of information to go on. Pretty much everything I needed, they managed to give me for that situation. There's some more, don't get me wrong, but they've really, really done well. So positive number one that I've managed to get sorted is the research, and logistics. Absolutely awesome. One of the biggest setbacks I've had to date, apart from one that we had the other day, sadly, which I'll go through at the end. One of the big ones is I created an app during lockdown called Social Bubbles. I knew when I created the app I was always going to have to get investors on board to make it fly. That was one of the prerequisites. The trouble is with a lot of these things, you've got to have something that works to show to investors. So you've got to go through all the challenge at the start in creating it, getting it coded, getting it moving, getting it marketed, getting a website for it, you name it, everything. Getting it launched on Apple, getting it launched on Google Play. I did all those things. They were the positives. I did some really good stuff. The app did get somewhere around 1,000 users eventually, but sadly it just wasn't getting the interaction long term. So I had users, but they weren't using it long term. And the simple maths for that was the coding just was not right. No matter what happened, there was always something wrong. When some people logged on, they couldn't do X, they couldn't do Y. And sadly, that hindered my chances of getting more people to use it, and in the end, not getting investors. It was a hard time. It took about a year and a half during lockdown. It wasn't very nice to see that I failed at something. But I'm very much a positive chap. If you fail at something, get up, try something else. And also, if you don't try something, you'll always get a no. It's just like the old adage. If you ask somebody, you may get a yes. If you never asked them in the first place, you've already got a no. So I don't regret trying Social Bubbles for the finances of getting to the South Pole. And I learned a hell of a lot in doing so. But as I said, it was dark days when it didn't work, and it's hard to pull something that doesn't work. Anyway, that was one of the biggies of a setback, but there are far many more positives. One of the massive positives I've got is the planning stage. I've done a vast amount of planning for this now, and I've got a really good plan in place. I briefly mentioned logistics earlier with bringing a logistics company on board. There's still a lot more planning to go on. For example, training. My training plan is pretty hard. Probably saw that from the previous video. I can't just be fit, I need to be ultra fit for this, absolutely beyond fitness. And that's why my plan is so much into doing a lot of hard days, pulling this tyre for example. That's why my videos are generally done when I'm pulling tyres, because I've got a lot of time spare, so I tend to do it during those hours. But also on top of that, you've got many other things. For example, the plan of all of my skills and everything else. So in March next year, I'll be going to Norway for several weeks to do my skills training, both in the classroom and also on the snow. So my ski training, pulling a pulk, living out a tent, make sure the safety side, you're not mixing your fuel with your food, you name it, everything is going to be done over in Norway. Come back from Norway, I then go off to pull my tyre from John O'Groats to Land's End. Now, several reasons for this is that I need to get my exposure up. I need to be known a lot more. If I do this, I'm going to get a lot of press on board and hopefully a lot of social media, and therefore become a lot more appealing for commercial sponsors to come on board for the pole. And also crowdfunding. I'm going to do a crowdfunding site to try and get the money together for this challenge. It really is going to be awesome. After that, well then, I'll be doing the whole of the sort of summer months, early winter, and basically in so doing, I'll then take myself into the next winter. When I get to winter, guess what? I'll be out back in Norway again, or places like that, to solidify a lot of my skills. So I need to spend a lot of time not just learning, but also on my own out there to prove that I can do it, to get to the pole on my own. Then, if all goes well and everything's on plan, I'm looking to do Greenland crossing solo in about August of 2024. Reason for that is not necessarily for the skills, because I should have those in place already. It's to do the actual fitness side and make sure I am the fittest I can possibly be, so when I come back in November 24, I go for the record. Then in November 24, finally, is the record attempt itself. That's exactly when it's going to happen. So that's the sort of plan you've got in place. It's a massive plan. It's like running a company, for goodness sake. But get a plan in place, awesome. And I've got one. That is a massive positive. So, one of the other setbacks we've had is injury. Fortunately, I've only been injured once, thank goodness. But when I got injured, I went to physio, several sessions. Sadly, I was never diagnosed correctly. Nothing was sadly getting any better. So I had to ditch them and move on to the next one. The next physio has been far, far better, and managed to diagnose exactly what is happening using ultrasound as well. The great news of all this is now we know what's going on. It's going to take about 8 weeks to fix, give or take. It's tendon, what is it called? Gluten tendinopathy, I think it's called, or words along those lines. Basically, it's the tendons up right at the top of your glutes that are all inflamed and there's problems with them. The good thing is, it doesn't affect my training, apart from if I'm going up very serious steep hills. So I've canned the steep hills temporarily, but every other part of the training can carry on. Be with the physio for 8 weeks, but he's good, and I'm going to keep him on board for future if I ever need it. So that's another example of turning a negative into a positive. You can get it sorted. If it's not working, change it, do something else. Absolutely brilliant. But that was one of the setbacks we got over pretty quickly. So, one of the big positives, victories I've had, getting my website sorted, getting the IT sorted, getting the YouTube channel sorted. First off, my website. I created a website for £1. Seriously, it's a good website as well. DominicRenshaw.com. It's my name, easy. But seriously, you can do it. If you go to Google websites, just type that in Google websites, you can create a really good website for nothing. They also host it for nothing. In the old days, I remember going to a Google website and they weren't great. You can do a lot more with them now. And strange enough, they integrate very, very well with other parts of your Google products. If you're a Google person, you might be Apple, in which case it's not as great, but it's still very, very good. The reason it cost me £1, because I had to buy the URL, DominicRenshaw.com. And Ineos is where I went to. We're doing a special deal, £1 for 2 years. So I bought it. Absolutely brilliant. The Google names, by the way, if you're on the Google website and you create one, their URLs are pretty rubbish. So you have to go elsewhere. GoDaddy, Ineos, any of those ones will work if you need to. The second part was the YouTube channel I've created. I played around with it for a couple of months, not really understanding what I was doing, how I was doing it, what I was filming, you name it. Lots of different things weren't working. Fortunately, I have a friend who's got a very good channel called the Narrowboat The Narrowboat Pirate. Brilliant lady. She gave me lots of tips of how to do it. She's got about 10,500 subscribers on her channel. It's really, really good. So I've taken all those tips, or most of them so far. Still got a few more to implement. And the channel's getting a lot better. It's more organised into playlists. So we've got season 1 now. It's all about how it's all going, all planning, logistics, you name it. Season 2 will be Norway. And season 3, John O'Groats to Land's End. You can see how this is going. But it's really, really good. Really happy with the IT side. And with IT, Google it, you'll find lots of answers out there. Oh, what a fabulous day it is. Anyway, let's get on to what happened at the start of this week. There was such an upset, such a down on what was going on. A real setback. Sadly, I got a call from the charity I'm looking to sign a contract with for raising the money for the John O'Groats Land's End, the Greenland, and also the South Pole trip. Sadly, I got a call that said, no thank you, we can't do it. That really hit hard, because charities, I like to raise money for charity when we're doing anything like this. One of the biggest ups when I came off Everest was knowing that I'd raised money for Thames Valley Air Ambulance. It was awesome, and it gave me a real high, and I'd never experienced that. I'd raised small amounts for charity before, never a large amount, and it really was a high. So when I got called earlier in the week saying no, we're not interested, it was a real downer. I've been trying to get hold of the charity since to find out what happened and why, and about 20 minutes ago I've spoken to the person I've been contacting to find out what's going on. Transpires that sadly the people making the decision are not the people I'm speaking to in the charity. It's someone else, and in so doing, hopefully now I'm going to get a call a Zoom call with the people actually making the decisions. One, because they get to know me as a person and what I'm doing this for. I come across a lot in business where if you don't speak to the person making the decisions, often it gets lost in Chinese whispers. And as such, nothing ever happens and you lose something. So fingers crossed, the really bad news this week, you never know, it might turn into positive. I'm going to have to give you an update on that next week, sadly guys, but that was the bad news. Hopefully I can turn it around. I'll let you know a little bit later. So to finish on the last high this week, the really good thing that happened this week, I was asked by a local school to come in and talk to some of the school children. It was really nice actually. They've been doing some work around explorers by pure fluke, and somebody found out that the things that I do, and I live very close, so they invited me in. It was absolutely brilliant to try and inspire some of the younger people who will become explorers in the future. So I want to thank the school for that. It was absolutely awesome. Finished a really nice high off for the week for me, and really enjoyed it, so thank you very much for that. So what's happening next week then? Well, next week's going to be all about the John O'Groats to Land's End and the organisation of it. So we'll be going through how we organise the route, how we organise why the route's going where the route is, and other things, for example, where I'm going to be visiting. So I'm going to be visiting a lot of cities, and in so doing, I'm going to have to get hold of the councils or the mayors to try and get as much publicity as possible, to get as much money for the charity as possibly can. So that's going to be a lot of cities I'm going through, small towns, etc. Got to do all those as well. I'm going to put all the points on the map as well as where the campsites are I'm going to possibly be staying in, because there's going to be no set route on the campsite. For example, I may be having a really good day and be able to push further, or I might be having a bad day and have to go less. But in so doing, I also have to have on the map lots of shops as well. So for example, if I'm going to stop at a campsite one evening, I need to know where the shop is closest to that, so I can pick up supplies before I arrive at the campsite. Because what I don't want to be doing is carrying all the food continually all the time. That adds to extra weight. Last but not least, all the other places I'm going to be visiting. For example, I'm going to be visiting hopefully my old schools, where I used to go to schools, even university as well, some of the clubs I'm a member of, all the different places in my life that have meant something to me. I'm going to try and visit these places, mainly to inspire people and also gain as much money for the charity as I can. So I'm going to go through all that next week. It's going to be quite in-depth, but it's going to show you what happens when you're trying to organise something like John O'Groats to Land's End. It's going to take about 44 days. That's next week. So tune in. See you then. Thanks for listening, guys and girls. Been awesome.